won't fear your fists. They'll pretend they do, but fists are noise, easily explained, easily dismissed. What terrifies them is your silence in a moment of chaos, the way you don't flinch when insulted, the way your eyes remain still while the room trembles. Because a strong mind doesn't react, it calculates. It doesn't collapse under pressure, it inhales it. And the deeper your understanding, the colder your demeanor becomes to those who feed off weakness. Build a mind so strong that when you walk into a room, it feels like judgment has arrived. Not loud, not violent, just there, unmoved. Most people operate on borrowed confidence. Their mind's a noisy parade of assumptions and insecurities they call personality. But you construct your identity like architecture, stone by stone, scar by scar, until you become unshakable. Not because you've seen nothing, but because you've seen everything, and none of it broke you. A mind like that unnerves people, because they can't seduce it, can't distract it, can't manipulate it with praise or destroy it with silence. The average person needs approval like air. They panic when misunderstood. But when you no longer need to be understood, when your convictions are built on something deeper than applause, you become alien to them, a threat. You evolve past flattery, past insult, past the superficial scaffolding of social currency. They don't know how to exist around someone who doesn't need the validation they worship, and so they fear you, not because you are cruel, but because you remind them of what they lack. You reflect back to them the parts of themselves they've never dared to meet. A strong mind doesn't argue. It observes. It doesn't need to control. It simply refuses to be controlled. You don't need to scream to dominate. Your presence alone disorients those who rely on reaction to feel powerful. You become unreadable. And the unreadable man is always the most dangerous, because no one knows where to strike. That's the mind you build, not for attention, but for precision. You're not here to be loud. You're here to be inevitable. The ones who spend their days crafting clever words and curated facades will crumble when confronted with a presence that does not waver. You become their mirror, one that doesn't flatter, but reflects the truth they've been avoiding. That is your weapon. That is your throne. But such a mind doesn't come from comfort. It comes from hell, from sitting in pain without numbing it, from peeling back the layers of your own delusion until your ego screams for mercy and you don't grant it. Most want peace before strength, but peace given before strength is always illusion. True peace is built through warfare, internal, brutal, the kind of silence where you meet every version of yourself and decide who lives and who dies. You kill the part that needs to be liked, the part that breaks when ignored, the part that needs to be right, to be seen, to be safe. And what remains is a mind forged in solitude, in self-confrontation, in ruthless accountability. That mind is not likable, but it is undeniable. And that's the price. You become feared, not because of what you do, but because of what you've endured. Strength of mind is not built in the spotlight. It is built in the shadows, when no one is watching, when the only voice you hear is the one trying to convince you to quit. You train that voice. You discipline it. You do not entertain its pleading. Most people let their thoughts own them, but not you. You will own your thoughts the way a king owns a kingdom, ruthlessly. You interrogate every fear. You corner every excuse. You don't let a single thought pass through without being examined. Is it useful? Is it real? Does it serve my evolution? If not, you cast it out. Because in the kingdom of your mind, weakness is exile. You don't give comfort to parts of you that sabotage your future. You strip them of power, and in doing so, you become something terrifying to those who can't even spend a minute alone without distraction. Build a mind so strong that betrayal becomes data, that heartbreak becomes fuel, that failure becomes refinement. While others break under loss, you analyze it. You do not internalize disrespect, you study it. You do not seek vengeance, you replace what was broken with something indestructible. Most people process life emotionally. They're driven by how things feel, how things appear. But you become cold with precision. You rewire your pain into patterns. Every disappointment becomes a calculation. Every setback becomes a system. And when you return, it's not with words, it's with transformation. You never announce your healing. You let your evolution terrify the ones who thought you were done. That's the kind of mind that doesn't need a crown to rule. It rules in silence. It rules in presence. It rules without ever needing to explain why. People will call you emotionless, detached. They will misunderstand your stillness as absence. Let them. You don't owe the world an explanation for your inner architecture. You didn't build this mind for their comfort. You built it for war, for survival, for dominion. And while they tremble at the thought of solitude, you draw power from it. You've learned to sit in your own darkness and come out with strategies. You've stopped bleeding in public, stopped asking for clarity from those who benefit from your confusion. You've turned your mind into a fortress, impenetrable, disciplined, sovereign. They fear you not because you're dangerous, but because you're free. Free from their expectations. Free from the emotional blackmail they've normalized. Free from the invisible games that keep most men crawling. A strong mind doesn't just resist manipulation, it exposes it. It sees the motive before the move, the pattern before the punchline. And instead of reacting, it records. And that, more than any confrontation, is what dismantles the manipulator. Because they no longer control the narrative. You do. You don't speak when provoked. You wait. You observe. You smile while they spiral. And when the time comes, you move in silence. You execute without noise. You don't need to shout that you're no longer the same. You simply become unrecognizable, unreadable, unreachable. You become the blueprint others try to decode, the storm others try to avoid. And in doing so, you establish a new form of dominance, not through fear, but through unwavering presence. Let your mind be the quietest part of you and the sharpest. The thing that doesn't break under scrutiny, that doesn't bend under pressure. People will test you. Life will tempt you. But your mind must remain the one place where no one else has access. Not unless they earn it. Not unless they deserve it. That's your sanctuary. That's your crown. That's the empire you build within yourself. One thought, one standard, one rejection at a time. And while the world chases popularity, you chase presence. While they crave comfort, you hunt discipline. And that makes you a threat. Not because you seek destruction, but because you have become immune to it. You walk into rooms, and the atmosphere shifts. Not because you demand attention, but because your stillness commands it. You don't speak often, and when you do, every word feels like a decision. People sense something in you they can't articulate. It unnerves them, because they're used to minds that can be manipulated with a compliment, derailed with a rumor, weakened with silence. But you've trained yours to remain locked in, locked on, locked down. Your thoughts do not spiral, they calculate. Your emotions do not dictate, they serve. You have trained your mind to sit in fire and remain composed. And when people realize they can't rattle you, can't distract you, can't guilt you. They lose their grip. You didn't need to become louder than them. You just needed to become quieter than their influence. And that stillness, that's what scares them most. A strong mind doesn't seek revenge through retaliation. It achieves it through transformation. You're not here to respond to insults. You're not here to waste energy trying to teach people what they're incapable of learning. You outgrow them, not to prove a point, but because you refuse to stay in places that shrink your thinking. You don't need to clap back. You outbuild, outwork, outlast. You walk past people who once rattled you and feel nothing but distance, because now your mind is wired differently. You no longer see enemies. You see inefficiencies, weaknesses in the system. Voices you once tried to please now sound like distractions. The game has changed, and so have you. And those who used to control you with chaos now feel powerless in your presence. Because nothing destabilizes a manipulator more than the one who is no longer moved. You've become immune to flattery and immune to offense. You know your worth. It's been carved in the furnace of solitude, that furnace that most avoid. But you entered willingly. You sat in discomfort without seeking a distraction. You faced the noise of your own mind until the noise died and discipline was born. Now, you walk through life differently. You don't chase opportunity. You attract it through clarity. You don't chase love. You command it through presence. You don't fear being alone. You weaponize solitude. And when others feel anxious without constant stimulation, you sit at ease. Because you've spent enough time in the fire to become flame-proof. And when the world burns again, as it always does, you'll be the one who walks through it untouched, watching the ashes fall like snow. They'll try to figure you out, analyze your next move. But strong minds don't operate in patterns that others can trace. You've erased predictability and replaced it with precision. You don't react, you reposition.